I was sitting in the rocking chair on the porch, looking at the horizon. The gentle breeze swayed my brown hair, but I felt nothing. At 29 years old, my life had been shattered by tragedy. A year ago, my husband John died in a car accident. Since then, I have struggled daily to find a purpose, a reason to continue. The memories of happy moments constantly haunted me. I remembered the nights when he cradled me in his arms, promising a future that now seemed like a mirage. The laughter during our sunset walks, the candlelit dinners, and the movie nights at home where we snuggled on the couch. John was my soulmate, and together we envisioned a bright and full of possibilities. Now, that future seemed like a distant, unattainable memory. I tried to hold on to anything that could ease the pain. The void left by John's absence was profound and overwhelming. Every corner of the house held a memory of him, making it impossible to escape the grief. The nights were the worst. The bed we once shared now felt like an abyss of loneliness. I could barely sleep, haunted by dreams and painful memories. My mother called every night, trying to pull me out of the darkness with words of encouragement. Friends and family tried to offer support, but I felt isolated, as if trapped in a bubble of pain that no one could penetrate. I avoided leaving the house, preferring the solitary refuge of my home. The photos of John scattered around the house were both a comfort and a torture, constantly reminding me of what I had lost. I knew I needed to find a way to move forward, but every attempt seemed in vain. The grief was a constant shadow, and I couldn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. On the first anniversary of John's death, I decided I needed to visit him. I bought a bouquet of white lilies, his favorite flowers. With each step toward the cemetery, I felt the weight of my decision tighten around my chest. The grey clouds in the sky reflected my state of mind, and the cold wind cut through my skin. The cemetery was on the outskirts of town, surrounded by a dense forest that whispered with the wind. Ancient trees bent over the graves, casting shadows that danced on the tombstones. As I passed through the iron gate, I felt a shiver down my spine. Each step echoed in the sepulchral silence, interrupted only by the distant chirping of crickets. The gravel path crunched under my feet, and the smell of damp earth mixed with the scent of the flowers I carried. As I approached John's grave, a growing sense of despair took hold of me. Finally, I reached the grave. The tombstone was still new, gleaming in disturbing contrast with the old ones around it. I noticed, next to John's tombstone, an empty space. The beaten ground there indicated that a second tombstone was planned, which sent a shiver down my spine. Then something strange caught my attention. Below John's name, my own name was engraved on the stone, followed by my date of birth and a blank line where the date of my death should be. The shock paralyzed me. I felt my heart race and a deep chill take over my body. My name? What did that mean? My mind spun in confusion and fear. I touched the inscription with trembling fingers, trying to understand if it was an illusion. But it wasn't. The horror of the discovery settled deep within me. I backed away from the tombstone, stumbling over my own feet, and nearly fell. My breathing was rapid and shallow, and my heart was pounding uncontrollably. The world around me seemed to darken, and the cold intensified. With one last terrified look at the tombstone, I turned and ran, leaving behind the grave that now seemed to harbour a personal and unbearable threat. Arriving home, Still breathless and with trembling hands, I picked up the phone and called my best friend, Lisa. I desperately needed to tell someone about what I had seen. When she answered, I could barely speak, the words tumbling out and interspersed with my rapid breathing. Lisa, I just came back from the cemetery. His name, my name, is on the tombstone next to John's. Lisa listened in silence for a moment, trying to process what I had said. Then, her calm and reassuring voice responded, "Anna, you must have been mistaken. Maybe you read it wrong, or it was some kind of stupid vandalism." She tried to console me, but the disbelief in her tone was evident. "No, Lisa, I saw it clearly. My name was there, with my date of birth and everything. It was like a nightmare." My voice trembled, and tears now flowed freely. Lisa tried to calm me down, suggesting that we should investigate further before jumping to conclusions. The next morning, Lisa insisted on accompanying me to the cemetery to check the tombstone. When we arrived, the pale morning sun made the place seem less threatening, but my heart still beat wildly. As we approached John's grave, I saw that the inscription was exactly as I had described. Lisa looked at the tombstone with wide eyes, disbelief slowly turning into concern. "Anna, this is strange. We need to talk to someone about this." We then decided to seek out the cemetery administrator. The administrator's office was a small brick building in the corner of the cemetery. The administrator, an elderly man with deep wrinkles and a perpetually tired expression, greeted us with skepticism. I explained the situation, hoping he could offer some explanation. He accompanied us back to the grave, observed the inscription, and shook his head, puzzled. "I've never seen anything like this in all my years here. This doesn't make sense." "Please, can you remove my name from the tombstone?" I pleaded, my voice heavy with despair. He agreed, promising to resolve the issue immediately. The next day, he called to confirm that the removal had been done. Feeling a mix of relief and apprehension, I decided to return to the cemetery to check. Lisa accompanied me, and when we arrived, my heart sank. The inscription with my name was still there, as if it had never been touched. Lisa held my hand tightly. "Anna, this isn't normal. Something really strange is happening here." Desperate and confused, we sought help from the authorities. We went to the police station, and the officer on duty listened to our story with an expression alternating between interest and skepticism. He promised to investigate, but made it clear that it was unlikely they would find anything concrete. We left there with a sense of helplessness. As we drove back home, Lisa tried to comfort me. "We'll figure out what's going on. No matter what it is, you're not alone." Despite Lisa's comforting words, a growing sense of terror settled in my chest. Something beyond comprehension was at play, and I had no idea how to face it. The first supernatural manifestations started subtly, almost imperceptibly. A week after the visit to the cemetery, while I was trying to sleep, I heard a faint murmur coming from the hallway. I sat up in bed, paralyzed, trying to understand if it was my imagination. The murmur continued, indistinguishable words, but with a familiar cadence that chilled me to the bone. I got up, hesitant, and walked to the bedroom door, but there was nothing there. In the following days, the events intensified. Objects in the house started moving on their own. One morning, I found the kitchen chairs arranged in a perfect circle, like a macabre gathering of ghosts. On another occasion, The photos of John and me were scattered on the floor, although I clearly remembered having stored them in a box. Each new incident increased my sense of dread, leaving me on the verge of a nervous breakdown. The nightmares also began to torment me. Always involving John, each dream was more disturbing than the last. In the first one, I saw him in our garden, his serene expression slowly transforming into a mask of pain and despair. In the second, he was trapped in a burning car, reaching out to me as I watched helplessly. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart racing and a scream stuck in my throat. The first appearance of John in his ghostly form was the most terrifying. It was an especially cold night, and I was in the living room, trying to distract myself with a book. Suddenly, I felt a presence beside me. When I looked, there he was, translucent and shrouded in an ethereal mist. His expression, once full of life, now conveyed deep and disturbing sadness. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. He raised his hand as if wanting to touch me, but before I could react, he disappeared as quickly as he had appeared. Each of these experiences left me more terrified. I knew something was very wrong, and that forces beyond comprehension were now at play in my life. The supernatural events became more frequent and violent, turning my life into a constant nightmare. One night, I woke up to a strange sound coming from the living room. As I descended the stairs, I saw a message written in blood on the wall. "You are next." Horror and despair washed over me as I tried to comprehend the meaning of those words. The dark figures also became a constant presence, moving around the corners of the house, always just out of my sight. One day, I saw a tall, distorted shadow crawling down the hallway. When I followed it, it disappeared as if it had never been there. Over time, I began to lose my sanity. Reality and hallucination blended, making it hard to discern what was real. I heard constant whispers, distorted laughter, and saw figures lurking in the darkness. Every reflection in a mirror seemed to show something that shouldn't be there. Something watching me with malevolent intentions. Desperate to understand and combat what was happening, I sought help in books on occultism and accounts of supernatural events. I spent sleepless nights researching, trying to find an explanation or a solution. I even considered exorcisms and rituals to ward off evil spirits. Lisa, noticing my deteriorating mental state, visited me more frequently. At first, she tried to be a voice of reason, saying that everything could be explained rationally. However, as the events intensified, Lisa also began to doubt her own sanity. One night, while we were talking in the living room, the television turned on by itself, showing disturbing images of John, his face disfigured and in agony. The scenes repeated, like a broken tape, each time more disturbing. "We need help, Anna. This is beyond us," she said, her voice trembling. I knew she was right, but who could we turn to? I knew I couldn't continue living like this. Something had to be done. Sitting at home, surrounded by shadows and constant whispers, an idea came to mind. My God, what can I do to resolve this? Everything started when I saw my name written on my late husband's tombstone. Maybe the answer is there. I will go to the cemetery to see if I can find something. I decided to face what was haunting me and return to the cemetery. I informed Lisa of my decision, but this time she couldn't accompany me. Though reluctant, she agreed to stay at home, praying for my safe return. When night fell, I left alone for the cemetery. The atmosphere was even more sinister than I remembered. The wind howled through the trees, making the dry leaves dance across the ground. The iron gate creaked as I pushed it, and a sense of despair took over me. With each step, the tension increased, and I felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on me. I walked slowly along the gravel path, each step echoing in the silence of the night. The tombstones seemed older and more worn, as if time had accelerated since my last visit. The shadows cast by the full moon created distorted and frightening shapes that seemed to watch me as I moved forward. Finally, I reached John's grave. The tombstone gleamed under the moonlight, and my name was still engraved on it, along with a death date that now seemed to be approaching rapidly. The cold felt more intense around the grave, and the presence of something evil was palpable. But what caught my attention the most was the spot next to John's grave. Where there had previously been only a piece of beaten ground, there was now a dark and deep opening. The place that would be my grave was open, like a macabre invitation. As I watched, I heard a sound that froze me in terror. It was John's voice, coming from inside the hole. "Anna, help me, please," he whispered, his voice filled with pain and despair. "I'm trapped here." I approached the opening, trying to listen better. John's voice seemed clearer, more desperate. The cold intensified with each step, and the darkness around seemed to close in on me. Suddenly, the ground beneath my feet gave way, and before I could react, I slipped and fell into the hole. As I fell, I realized it was deeper than I had imagined. My body hit the ground with a dull thud, sending pain radiating through my ankle, which I twisted upon landing. I lay there for a moment, panting, trying to catch my breath and process the situation. The air around me was cold and dense, making it difficult to breathe. The only light came from the opening above, casting shadows that danced menacingly on the dirt walls around me. With difficulty, I stood up, leaning on the cold, damp walls for balance. Each movement caused a sharp pain. "Anna," John's voice called again, but now it sounded different, deeper and distorted. With my heart pounding, I started walking toward the voice, despite the fear gripping my chest. Suddenly, in front of me, a figure began to materialize. It was John, but not as I knew him. His appearance was grotesquely altered, his skin decaying, like I was seeing a zombie from a movie in front of me. John looked at me. "You are destined to occupy the grave next to mine. Only then can we be together forever." "No, this can't be true," I said, my voice trembling. "There is no other way," he said in a voice that seemed to come from the depths of hell. "You must accept your fate. Not even death will separate us." Desperate, I looked around, searching for an escape. But the walls of the hole were steep, and the only opening was far above me. Gathering all the courage I had left, I tried to confront John. "I don't believe this. I will find a way to help you without sacrificing my life." John seemed to waver for a moment, as if struggling against an impulse. But then he advanced toward me with a fury I had never seen before. Fear paralyzed me. The confrontation was desperate. I tried to push him, to fight against the supernatural force he emanated, but it was useless. Each attempt at resistance seemed to be in vain. John quickly overpowered me, his superhuman strength subduing me effortlessly. "John, please!" I screamed, tears streaming down my face. But he didn't stop, his dead, merciless eyes fixed on me as he advanced. The struggle was brutal and brief. John attacked me with inhuman ferocity, and in a moment of absolute horror, I felt life draining from my body. The last thing I saw was his face, a mix of pain and macabre relief. Darkness enveloped me completely. The cemetery fell silent again, the wind carrying only the echo of a sealed fate. The next morning, the tombstone was updated. Anna Thompson, 1995 to 2024.